First, thank you all for being here and welcome to our first in a series of educational webinars titled Getting Real, How Difficult Is It to Transition to a Digital Food Safety and Quality Platform? Before we get going, just quickly go over the agenda. First, I want to introduce you to the panelists and have maybe each talk to a little bit about their organizations. We'll then spend a few minutes touching on the FDA's blueprint for the future and new era of food safety. Next, we'll talk about some of the challenges of a traditional paper-based food safety and quality system, then discuss some features and benefits of digital systems, and then also hear from grower, packer, shipper about their experience in making the leap from analog to digital. And then towards the end, we'll open it up for some questions for the group. So thanks for everybody for joining. My name is Matt Salley, and I'm a solutions consultant with iFood Decision Sciences. I've been involved with iFood since 2015, and my current role is to help companies define and tailor software solutions to fit their unique operations. Next is Beth Oleson. Beth is the Director of Education and Food Safety for Georgia Fruit and Vegetable Growers Association, and she works to educate producers and primarily in the Southeast regarding food safety on farms and in packing facilities. Next is Joseph Mathis. Joseph has been a leader in J&J Family of Farms food safety division for the last decade or so. He's currently the Senior Grower Development Manager for J&J, and he leads on-the-ground relationships and manages sourcing during the Georgian summer seasons up the East Coast and the supply chain for J&J. And then last, but certainly not least, is Peter Hamburg. Peter is a farm manager with J&J, has been with the company since, I think, 2013, and he is also part of Joseph's food safety team. So thank you again for all of you for being here. So to begin, I'd like to share just a little bit of background about iFood Decision Sciences. iFood was founded in 2013 by industry experts and food safety scientists with a mission to provide a solution that allowed producers to spend less time managing paperwork and get back to the business of producing safe, quality food. Beginning initially with growers, iFood has expanded to offer a full data management platform for the entire produce industry. And provides a complete solution for digitization of process and production information, as well as integration with the fresh produce supply chain. Today we have over 300 sites in 8 different countries. We are also members of several leading industry associations, such as Georgia Fruit and Vegetable, and contribute to many local, state, and national food safety guidelines. This past May, iFood acquired Trimble's Harvest Mark business, a leading producer of food traceability and quality inspection solutions. And in 2018, the two companies partnered to deliver an integrated supply chain solution for food safety, traceability, and quality. And the result of that is that now iFood's able to deliver an integrated supply chain solution for those 3 things, and the food safety and quality, and PT compliant traceability. And then lastly, iFood takes very seriously data security and privacy, and our solutions are configured so that our customers can be confident that their information is protected. So that's just a little bit about iFood and its background. So Beth, why don't you share a little bit about Georgia Fruit and Vegetable, as well as the produce food safety services?
Absolutely, thank you. Great to be here. So we were established as a trade association back in 1996. It was actually a bunch of farmers that felt they needed more representation, and they had full-time jobs growing produce and packaging it and selling it. So they couldn't be in Washington. They couldn't be there with the FDA and others really working to have a voice. So so we were established back in 1996. Since then, let's see, I think we're 24 years old. So next August will be 25. It's kind of a fun thing to think about, but we've really become more of a regional trade association for the produce industry. And so kind of the united voice for that, for the Southeastern produce industry. We've got about 500 members, grower, packer, shipper members across the Southeast. Geographic location in Georgia is not required for membership with GFVGA. And food safety has really always been a big part of who GFVGA is and a big focus of the Georgia Fruit and Vegetable Growers Association. And so back in 1999, when food safety really became the first thing that it is, a bunch of members came together and said, hey, we've got all these buyers that are asking us for something called a food safety audit or food safety programs. We're not quite sure what it is. We've never heard of it, but now we're being told we have to have audits, and can you help? And so we partnered with the University of Georgia, the Georgia Department of Agriculture, and Georgia Crop Improvement Association. And that's when food safety was just a simple, amazing place to be. And so it was standard SOPs and checklists and just helping people understand what the audit was and how to build food safety programs. And then sometime around 2010, 2012, GFSI came into play and really shook the whole industry up. And so that's when we really, again, with members coming to us and saying, we need something more, we need something different. So we were able to take that original food safety program, expand it into what we now have, which is produce food safety services. And we offer customized food safety program development, consultation, and education. It's tailored to operations around the nation. So we're not just here in Georgia, but we're literally all across the US. So we're excited to be here because there are so many changes on the national scale. We are so active with some of the national organizations and in Washington with the things that are happening with food safety regulations, and so how that's actually going to impact and trickle down into the produce industry and to our grower members as well. So I'm excited to be here to talk about this topic in particular because it is something that's new, but it's coming and it's not going to stop. So thank you, Matt, for having us.
Unmuted. Thank you, Beth. So next is Joseph Mathis and Peter Hamburg with J&J Family of Farms. Joseph, can you talk a little bit about your organization?
Sure. Good morning. We J&J started about 1983, so we've been in business close to 40 years. Definitely more or less a mom and pop down in South Florida type of organization, and just throughout the years expanded to now representing about 14,000 acres of farmland and about represents about 9 million packages, give or take, a year. I've been with J&J about 11 years, and 9 of them years I've worked in food safety as a part of the food safety team, and I'm just happy to be here today.
Great. Thank you for that. Beth, do you want to talk on the new era of smarter food safety?
Absolutely. So this is something that's relatively new that FDA's come out with, and they're calling it the new era of smarter food safety. And they have created about a 20-page blueprint, and they're calling it the blueprint for the future. And it's really looking at food safety, not as the pen and paper programs that we're used to, the checklists and things of that nature, but taking those materials and those programs and beginning to elevate them onto cloud-based and technology type programs. Thinking about who the leadership is right now, you've got Mr. Giannis that's up there, and I feel like he is where the entire, more than just the produce industry, but from our perspective, it's where the growers, the packers, the shippers, the distributors, and then the retailers and the wholesalers all come together. And now he's sitting in this regulatory seat. And so being able to take all of that information that he has gathered over his lifetime, and now bring it to a regulatory phase and see just where some of the hindrances have been during his career, and now seeing that from a regulatory standpoint, I feel like we're beginning to see his fingerprints along with others in the leadership of FDA, you know, Commissioner Hahn especially. This is what we're beginning to see. So there's 4 key elements to this blueprint for a new era of smarter food safety. The first, as you can see in the diagram, is the tech-enabled traceability. And that really is fairly self-explanatory. So taking records that are used to track where produce comes from and where it's going, and moving it beyond the one step up and the one step back in a paper format, but trying to create one system. And don't let that escape, but create one system that's able to talk to everybody. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody has to use the same branded system, but be able to create a technology system that'll be able to share data back and forth. So some things with that we've already begun to discuss within our association and others. And they also address this in the blueprint, but thinking about, you know, how do you protect your data? How do you put some gates in place so that some are allowed to see who's allowed to see what? So it's a good thing that they're wanting to do this, because their approach is definitely out of, if there's a foodborne illness, how can we as quickly as possible find out where the product is currently, maybe in homes, using shopper cards and other information, and then go all the way through the chain and find out where it came from, then be able to go from both sides of that spectrum and do a true traceability to where that issue may have occurred. If it's in the farm, if it's in the packing facility, a distribution issue, so forth or so on. So then the next is the smarter tools and approaches for prevention and outbreak response. And so they feel like once they have a better trace back, that they can begin to use that data to create root cause analysis, and then that information they can use to better information on prevention-based FSMA. So none of this is replacing FSMA. All of this is really built on top of FSMA. If you think about where we were back in 2011, pretty sure that's when FSMA was passed. So much has happened since then. But FSMA really moved FDA from a reactive position. So once there's an issue, then we begin to move. And they put them in a prevention-based position. So that whole entire large organization has really had to retool their thinking and their approach to so much of what we do now and what they do. And so it's not something has happened, now let's go figure it out. But FSMA has put them in a position of how can we either identify issues before they become an issue, or how can we make sure that we work with our supply source to make sure that that all of these, that they know what issues are and how to potentially prevent those. So with this smarter tools and approaches, they're also going to be looking at predictive analytic models to potentially identify when and where contamination may come from. They're also considering using third-party audits and the information from those third-party audits. So right now, all of this is an idea that's been given to us. None of this has really been fleshed out. The third pillar, very quickly, or the third core, is new business models and retail modernization. And I think a lot of this was already in the queue, Matt, but I think that the pandemic really magnified this. And so our retailers and the way that customers are shopping now is very different from where it was back in the 60s, 70s, or 80s. So we've got online shopping, and I think they actually reference this in the blueprint, but there's a a survey report that showed that 31% of US households during the pandemic began to utilize online grocery services. 31% of all US households. That's a huge number. And so when you think about that, you think, okay, well, that's fine. But then you have to think about if it's a delivery system. And so it's a regular Joe consumer who has a car and they've gone to pick up somebody's groceries and now they're delivering it. Do they understand temperature control? Do they understand cross-contamination? Are there other safety issues that they may not have understood? So it's not just looking at that one, but it's looking across this entire change and how FDA can help create some safety measures and educate the distributors and the manufacturers and the retailers on the importance of those key issues. And then finally, the fourth, which is something that's never been addressed before in my 15 years of food safety here. And it's addressing a food safety culture. So that's something that we talk about all the time. Create a food safety culture, work with a farm, work with a packing facility. And so it's not just about here's your SOP, here are your checklists, here's some education that's going to help you have a nice day, or we'll work with you, we'll train and things of that nature. But FDA now is wanting to create a huge movement. And again, it hasn't been fleshed out and rolled out for us to understand, but really use behavioral science. And they want to go from the farm field. There's packing facility, or there's ag employees and harvesters and crew leaders and farmers through the packing facility, through distribution, through grocery stores, and then also to the consumers' homes, and help foster and support and strengthen food safety culture in all of those places. And so using that behavioral science, they want to influence and change our behaviors. They want us to be able to address and think about food safety and then demonstrate a commitment in how we achieve our goals. So this is brand new. That element is brand new. So part of this is exciting. If you just sit back and look at this huge scheme that FDA has just rolled out, this is not going to be a small lift. When you begin to think through what that means for the produce industry, for each segment of the produce industry, and then you begin to look at what that may mean for each one of the farms or facilities that it's going to be applied to, I think there's definitely some areas that we're going to have to work together as a produce industry. We're going to have to continue to have lots of collaboration with state, local, and federal regulatory bodies. So it's exciting, and I feel like there's going to be some challenges, but I also don't think it's going to go away. I think this is going to come. I think this is going to push the produce industry as well as many others into technology where we may not be right now. And I think platforms like iFoods and others like it are definitely going to be some vehicles that the produce industry are going to be able to use and utilize to achieve some of these regulatory mandates that may be coming down.
Great. That's good stuff. Thank you. I think to your point, I think it is, to reinforce that point about it not going away, but it also doesn't happen overnight. And I think it's a process, and the fact that this new blueprint really is, like you said, kind of built on the back of FSMA. And it's that next iteration of kind of continuing to make improvement across processes. So that's good. Thank you. So there are a number of reasons, I think, why there are a lot of companies might be concerned or have questions about moving to a digital food safety and quality platform. I know, it's easy to stay in your comfort zone, right? I think, when you think about, well, it's always worked, so why can't we just keep doing it the way we're doing it? And I think some of those concerns are valid. I think people, may think, okay, well, my people aren't going to adopt it. The technology may be too complicated or it's going to be too expensive. it could potentially disrupt my current processes that I already have in place. Is it reliable? Is my data safe? And I think, as you alluded to, Beth, I think in light of the new era of food safety, companies need to start looking to innovate, and move away from the old, if it ain't broke, why fix it mindset. And I think you may have said this, but I think, while technology is at the center of the blueprint, it's, I think smarter food safety is more than just the technology piece. It's also about a simpler, more effective way, and also improving or modernizing, I should say, approaches and processes. So, I think, and the cartoon's a little bit of a ding, but I think that's just where we all are. You kind of get in the habit of doing things a certain way, but I think there's room for innovation and there's room for improvement. So let's talk about just the traditional paper-based FSQA systems. We talked the other day, Beth and I did, and both agreed that it's worked for a long time. And I think in many ways it served a purpose originally because it established a lot of food safety processes. And it was the basis for where a lot of those programs are today. However, as those processes are becoming outdated, I think there's room for improvement. I think the current paradigm for food safety for a lot of companies is, establishing their food safety program, follow those SOPs, fill out logs and assessments, put the paper in binders, set it aside. And then when audit time comes, spend weeks or sometimes even months preparing for that audit to ensure that those logs are there, or they got lost, or they're incomplete. And then after that, spending hours or days, maybe even in a conference room, performing an audit, sifting through boxes and binders. And yes, while there are a lot of companies that may scan those documents and upload that to a repository such as Dropbox or OneDrive, the main problem with that process as a whole is that the audit is only backward looking, right? That producer has no ability to say for certain whether that given box of, say, peppers or cabbage is going out on the truck has followed all of the food safety practices. I think that's a big one. I think there's some other shortcomings with a paper system. Oftentimes that information, whether it's food safety or quality, isn't accessible to analysis, right? That might help improve operations. And yes, there are companies that will manually input that data, say into Excel to generate reports, but that's not a very efficient process. And it's also time consuming. I think another lack of visibility or inaccessibility of information from remote locations. We touched on that. I mean, in this climate that we're living in, that's something that's difficult to do, right? To be able to access that information, and it can be a chore and possibly even cause some friction with buyers, et cetera. So those are a few. I think, Joseph, I'm sure you or Peter might be able to attest to some other issues. Maybe you can touch on a little more detail about how you and J&J documented food safety in the past, and maybe some of the challenges you experienced.
Absolutely. I would say some of the things, we definitely started our food safety program on a paper-based type food safety program across, whether it be on the farms, whether it be the facility down in Florida, South Florida, or in Arizona, if our different facilities. One approach that we did take with that, and one of the reasons I started looking toward a more of a solid foundation to manage our food safety program, an electronic system, is actually to manage our food safety program. Where on a paper-based, it definitely got us through. Definitely we had a food safety program in place at all these different areas. As a food safety representative, J&J, I wasn't as assured per se as I would until I got my boots on the ground, whether it be in Arizona or on the farm level, and understand where we're at and what's been taking place. So that just kind of started prompting my mind to start looking at an electronic type system for our food safety program, which led us to iFoods. About 5 years ago, I believe, Matt, is when we started talking to iFoods. So There's definitely, I still deal with a lot of growers and shippers and packers that have still a paper-based type food safety program. It's definitely current and relevant, but that next step is definitely electronic for sure. And we were just a little ahead of the curve. We started this 5 years ago, but we have seen a benefit by going electronic when it comes to our record keeping, to auditing processes, to truly managing our food safety program.
Matt, you're muted.
Thanks. I think you and I have spoken, Joseph, and I think too, that it didn't happen overnight, and it was a process. And I think even, and we can touch on this here in a few minutes about, that kind of gradual adoption, so to speak, and grew into it rather than try to just, jam it in. I think that's key. And that transition, it does require oftentimes an internal review of all of the forms, all of your processes that you're using to capture information. But oftentimes that's a benefit as well, right? It kind of forces you to say, okay, let's look through this. Let's make sure that we don't need to tweak. We don't need to make some improvements if there's a new regulation or the audit scheme has changed somewhat. Then that's a good time to do that process. But after that, we talk about that transition. I think once folks are trained and adapt to that new and improved way of doing things, that whole process of data collection, reviewing, and reporting are significantly improved. I think now, instead of filling out forms with a pen and a paper and clipboard, all of your field and facility assessments and logs are securely captured with a smartphone or a tablet or a computer. And I think it also enables you to do things like document corrective actions with photos. The ability to have real-time alerts for out-of-bounds issues. So, for example, if a failed or a missed water test, it was supposed to happen every hour, it got missed, then supervisors can be notified real-time via text or email that there's an issue or something wasn't done, right? You talk about a food safety culture, Beth. I think that's one of those things that you're able to do with a digital platform. And then for the person documenting those corrective actions, person it's in the facility or in the field, that guidance around your specific food safety program are built right into the software, right? To be able, we like just to say the answer to the test is right there, right? So there's no guessing. What do I do if there's animal intrusion, and if that guidance has changed or been updated, it's updated within that digital platform and software so that he or she may know what to do. Or there's a cell phone number that says, call Joseph immediately or call Peter immediately. Those are the types of things you're able to do real time. We talk about the capturing piece. I think just a couple highlights on that review process. You touched on it, Joseph, being able to do some things remotely, being able to say, okay, I can see that things are happening as they should be in Arizona, and I can be in Georgia or Florida, and I can review a lot of what's going on a regular basis. Because once that food safety information is captured, it's securely located in the cloud and accessible, at any point for you to review. And so we like to say that companies oftentimes are audit ready every day, because day to day, real time, that things are happening the way they should be or aren't happening for you to be able to address. And then, just generally speaking on the reporting side of the reporting process, you're able to quickly generate reports, whether it be for a buyer, an auditor, an inspector. And because a lot of those assessments or those logs can be GPS and timestamp reports, then going back to the culture piece, you can be certain that the processes are being adhered to that you put in place, and that work is getting done when and where you've outlined it to take place on a frequency. And so I could go on and on about features, but generally I think you can see that the process and benefits of a digital solution is rather significant. But I could sit here all day long, and I think maybe it might be better to get Peter and Joseph just to maybe talk through, and hear from someone who's actually made that transition. So
I would love to hear, as one who works with farms and packing facilities of all sizes all over the place, and you're used to the pen and paper, and your people are used to that. And so then all of a sudden you decide to make this transition, and you're using technology. And not that our employees are incapable of that. It's just different. So I would love to hear, on top of the benefits of what you guys have experienced very specifically, but what was that learning curve, if any, in making that transition with your employees, Peter or Joseph? Peter, you're muted, but we can see you.
All right, I'm unmuted now. There's definitely a challenge when it comes to transitioning from paper to electronic records. There's a challenge with getting records filled out generally on paper. So there's a resistance there, which you can overcome. And then once you do overcome that resistance and figure out how to get things to work properly, then it becomes much simpler, because everything's time stamped, and you can't let things stack up, so that was the biggest benefit for us on the farm, is having everything, like you said, audit ready. So when we have an auditor come up, or Florida inspector, I always tell people I'm ready for an inspection whenever. I'm not hiding anything, and it's all transparent. So that's a definite benefit. You'll definitely encounter resistance from people that are used to doing things the old way. But it's 2020, we're in different times. So I think my favorite part of the system is during audits. I can, they say, oh, when did you pick this crop? Well, I say, oh, I picked it this day, this day, this day, and this day. The reports are easy to get to and useful in harvesting records, and for spray records and chemical applications. So I tie those in together with my other reporting that I do. So yeah, that's it's a challenge.
Yeah, well, and I think, thankful, just for the record, Peter's beard is way better than my beard. But just Joseph, we mentioned this, we talked this. Maybe talk for a minute about that transition. Whether it was all at once or over time, and maybe any surprises, positive or negative, during that process. But maybe talk about how the process that you went through to implement, starting out, and then kind of where you are, say, fully implemented with a digital platform.
Well, I would definitely say it has to be a buy-in by the company or the organization as a whole. And I don't mean money per se. It's just that the mindset will have to change, just like Peter was talking about earlier. The learning curve for us was going from paper to real time, to electronic, to implementing, whether it be, the app on our phones, iPads, understanding the whole concept, just in general, the whole concept. Some of the things that when we started this program with iFoods, when we partnered with iFoods 4 or so years ago, I would say that once we agreed to it as an organization to go down this avenue, we conducted a soft launch, I would say, for a lack of a better word. And I know it's kind of tolling, or where you have to take paper records the same time. But what we were doing, we thought it'd be a benefit, even though it added a little bit of pressure on the record keeping process. In our soft launch, and we started on our farm level. We started on our farm, and we conducted a soft launch, and then we set a real time or a go live date that we done away with the paper records, and we went fully live with iFoods in this platform. So during that soft launch, or the soft start, that's when we started tweaking, I believe at one time we were having weekly conversations with iFoods on the things from feedback from Peter on the farm, getting feedback from them, and literally having weekly meetings with iFoods, how they could tweak it even better for our organization in the way that we do things on our farm. And it worked very well for us during that soft start. It really done well for us. We took that opportunity to get feedback from the growers, the farmers, the crew leaders, everyone, our food safety department and team. We took their notes and concerns, and we represented them back to iFoods. And they always came, they stepped up to the plate. Definitely, Robin's done an excellent job for us in these last 4 years or so. Any iFoods as an overall whole company organization. So we started there, and we went live in our farming practices, our GAPs. Then we just mirrored that in our facility and with our GMPs. Once we went live with our farm, then we started focusing on our facility with a soft start, and just mirrored what we experienced or learned, trial and errored in our farm, and just kind of applied it and mirrored the same thing going to our facility. We've done a soft start with our facility, got feedback from our operations, one's actually logging. And like I said, you still have to do 2 things of logs, electronic and paper, as a backup. And then once we went live, iFoods was definitely were able to erase all of the soft start stuff because it was just practicing. And then when we went live, we've been live ever since. And I think that's 4 years, probably, give or take, probably more, a little more than that. And we've not turned back. You know, we've been adding through that process the whole time. You know, if we see some tweaks here and there, if we change our operation, whether it be on the farm level or whether it be in our facility, we take note of that. We speak to the people inside of J&J, Peter on the farm, or our operations. We get that feedback, and we turn that request into Robin and iFoods, and they tweak our platform or our site, J&J site, with iFoods, and we go forward. Keep moving.
Great.
I've got a question for Peter and for Joseph. For that food safety director that may be watching this, that they understand that there's got to be a verification, a management level verification of a checklist, of a documentation. What does that process, not necessarily what does it look like, but how is that managed? Joseph, I don't know if I know that you have done that, but have you heard from the people that are going through, they get that email at the end of the day and they're reviewing those checklists and the actions that we're taking, and they're giving that management verification, and then it's a permanent record from that point on?
So I'll let Peter speak in just a minute, but just give an overall synopsis of kind of paper program. We just kind of adopted our lifestyle into this digital platform. So, understands that the food safety team is the ops of operations. It's also the farm team. That's actually who is the I'm gonna say the owners of the food safety program is the employees of that organization. So with that said, when we were in paper, we had, I would say, we broke it up in shipping, receiving, packing, packing line, responsibilities, not a forklift driver or a foreman of the shipping office. And these are your responsibilities when it comes to operations, but here's all your responsibilities when it comes to food safety. So we went that way with that. We was in that way when our paper, and then we just our electric. So not only as a supervisor of shipping, and here's your operational responsibilities as a supervisor. Here's also your responsibility as a supervisor for food safety. So we train our food safety team trains the supervisors, And then they have a little bit of responsibility to train their employees and about food safety. And we're there definitely as a come in and retrain when needed, and we see things kind of getting out of the way, and we're there to verify that our policies and procedures are going forward as a food safety team. But we rely heavily on whether it be operations in our facility or whether it be operations in our farm. And I'll let Peter talk a little bit about the farm.
Well, as far as verification of records goes, I mean, as you said, someone else on the farm will verify all records, and it gets verified, typically the day over the next day. So you get a timestamp on that. And, if something were to happen where you need a corrective action, it sends an email out instantly. So the person that's included on those emails will know right away, to contact and get the corrective action done. So it's not like a lack of verification. It's actually fast and it's simple. So that it's also really good for the auditors to see that. They like that. Every auditor we've had since we've started the program has been very, very impressed with the system. Makes it very easy.
That's what I continue to hear, is just how, from a food safety verification standpoint, that food safety manager or director, you're not inundated, but it's actually a very quick and simple process. And it gives you a better and quicker way to see what's happening throughout the day and be able to address it very quickly, rather than, you're a week behind on your verifications and then all of a sudden you catch something. So thanks for that insight.
Yeah, everything, just to spin off, just a synopsis, everything, Beth, that went in our digital platform, just like it was in our paper, there's two signals. It's actually doing or conducting the cleaning or, pre-op or whatever. And then their supervisor is verifying that it got done. And just like Peter said, if our parameters are not met, the food safety team gets an automatic email saying that it failed or it did not get done or whatever the case may be.
Well, I think what I've heard you say too is on the time piece of it. I think, again, go back to iFood's original mission, or just with the understanding, that farmers are, it's amazing how many hats people wear. And oftentimes that, food safety manager or director is wearing 3 hats. And I think being able to have something, that you can quickly access, whether it's for an auditor or whether it's internally, I think that time component, that efficiency is what I'm hearing. And the other thing you said, Joseph, a minute ago, is you're talking about that transition, is you had a plan, right? And I think that's key for anybody that is going to make that transition, is, to whomever you partner with, whether it's iFood or somebody else, is that to make sure that, you're working with someone that can work alongside you to help you develop that plan, and it's going to be unique for each company, right? It's going to be maybe different for each company in terms of that prep and how they implement. Some go full in, just rip the Band-Aid off. Some say, okay, I want to try it at one facility, and then we'll grow it to multiple facilities, or one farm and grow it to those farms. But I always have the mindset of, your short-term decisions or your short-term solution, right, is in the context of the long-term strategy. And I think, being able to go, with a platform, it really is that, a platform rather than just a point solution. So again, I think that's key on the plan. Just maybe real quick, and maybe open up. We've got a couple questions and that are coming in, and want to answer those. But now that you have maybe just 1 or 2 highlights, now that you did move to that platform, are there any ways that you saw improvements in the organizations that you didn't anticipate, or did it go as planned? Were you, maybe speak to that for a second.
For sure. And I would say one of the things that we've seen in the last couple of years, like I said, I believe that we're a little bit ahead, and we've always kind of hung our hat as a company to be ahead of everybody else, you know what I mean, and just kind of what works for us. But I would say that some of the ups, I would say positives, is the auditing process. I know that Peter quickly just a few minutes ago, but I mean, we're to a point now. So I'll just kind of give you an idea of kind of what we have in our site. All our policies and procedures, everything is in our document storage in iFood's site and J&J site through iFoods. So when it comes to auditing time, we really sit behind a big screen and we just kind of click. They want to see logs, they want to see policies, procedures, whatever the case may be. We have all our non-produce vendors, letters of guarantee. I mean, we have a whole filing system in our document storage. So when it's audit time, we're really, just like Peter alluded to just a little while ago, we're audit ready all the time. I mean, and that is a big deal nowadays, especially with FDA. You know, just going forward, you know, sometimes with customers, second party and third party you schedule, second party customers let you know, and you kind of schedule, but FDA can walk in at any time. And I feel that one of the benefits for years is that we're ready and we stay ready. And just because of having the access and the ability to look through and go through and verify on a real-time basis. So that's some of the benefits in a environment that we are in right now with COVID-19 definitely present. I would say that we've had the ability to give auditors access to our site where they could do a pre-audit, for a lack of a better word, before they actually come on site and look through our policies and procedures. And if they're willing to, I mean, they don't have to, but I know that in the times that we live in right this very second, a lot of people don't want to gather around the table, don't want to sit across, very, want to be spaced out. So this gives us some opportunity to explore that avenue even more so. We give them access, take that access away once the audit is over. So it's not like they always have the capabilities of looking in our program or whatever, but that's just some other functions that throughout the years we've established with iFoods. Especially right now, we're using it more. It's more relevant now than it has been in the past, for sure.
Great. Well, thank you both. I mean, for you and Peter for sharing that. I know that's helpful, not to hear it from me, but to hear from folks that have gone through it. So I appreciate that. We've got about 10 minutes or so, and so left. And what I'd like to do is maybe open it up for some questions. We've got a couple, I think, that have come through, but maybe just open it up. I think while maybe people are submitting or Anna's opening it up, I think one of the questions that came up.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
That came up was, do you use your own forms? You have to switch to new forms, and unlike a fillable PDF, at least with iFood, the platform, it's a database management system, so it is a full database, and so the forms aren't just scanned and they're fillable, because that has to go into a data field. So in order to get, be able to get the kind of analytics and querying to be able to look for records, it's set up that way. And so what we do is we understand the program, we understand all of the forms that those companies are using, and then we tailor across the dozen or so feature groups within iFood. I mean, from field, facility, quality, workflow management, supplier management, document management. You touched on that, traceability. We tailor the program to reflect each company's unique operations, right? There's going to be certain questions that are applicable to, a tree fruit grower that aren't applicable to a leafy greens grower, right? So those are the things that the database is able to do. So hopefully that answers that question.
Hey, Matt, I can kind of help that. What we did was we sent all of our records to iFoods for them to understand where we were at when it comes to our paper logs versus where we need to be within iFoods. And I think that gave a little bit of direction of iFoods and understanding how our program or how our logging worked, whether it be on a daily, weekly, monthly, biannually, whatever the case across the board, the farm or
at our facilities, GMP. We did collect them, and depending on where we were working in that soft start, or actually before, we sent that to iFood so they could understand what we were looking at, what we wanted.
Got it. What else? Surely we couldn't have been that thorough. There's got to be some questions.
Well, I think that Joseph really hit on something there toward the very end, with auditors, but then also FDA. We don't do a lot with USDA in this industry, but regulatory organizations during this pandemic figured out that they could use technology to continue to do the regulatory, at least some degree of the regulatory inspection, while everybody was socially distanced and in the pandemic. They didn't necessarily have to be there completely in person in order to conduct an inspection or an audit, but they could utilize digital records. They could utilize video conferencing and things of that nature to be able to walk through an organization and to be able to ask for very specific things to be shown. So this new era of smarter food safety is not new, and it did not come about because of the pandemic, but it definitely, I feel like the pandemic and COVID-19 has increased it and really kind of launched it. Now that our regulatory organizations, I'm being facetious, but they figured out they can utilize technology to do their job and not just email.
Yeah. There's a quick question here about just ROI. I think that's again, when you start looking at from an organization standpoint, cost, and I think we look at ROI in kind of two veins. One is cost. How can a platform affect cost? How can a platform affect revenue? I think on the cost side, we've talked a little bit about just in terms of the administration, audit prep, just the number of man hours oftentimes that's spent. So you may have that person that is doing those things in addition to other things, but if they're spending their time doing that, well, they're not spending their time on the food production side or the actual business of the operation. And so I think that's one way we talk about cost. I think we've seen some companies with just you wouldn't believe how much paper and ink and storage was being spent on an annual basis just for all that information. Now again, you can move to a repository, but again, being able to sift through that, organize that is time consuming. And I think on the revenue side, a couple different ways. I think speed or time to market. So if there's needing to, and Joseph, we've talked about this a little bit, of being able to, whether it's bring on a grower, that you can quickly kind of validate their program to say, yep, we can sell this to any of these retailers because of X, Y, and Z. We're able to validate that quickly. That's a revenue effect. I think another one that we hear and I think talk about is brand. I mean, brand gets thrown around a lot when you talk about brand safety. Being able to say, look, as a company, we have a process and a system in place where we're confident. That whole going back to that culture component. I think you could probably go hand in hand with brand to be able to ensure that, hey, the products we're selling are safe, right? And we can look at quality metrics. We can talk about percentages, and we can really get myopic around our processes, or whether it's food safety, quality, or traceability. So I think those are to answer that question on ROI. Here's another one. If the grower doesn't have Wi-Fi or cell service in the farm area or parts of the facility, a good question. That you're still able to capture that data in the offline mode. So you might be, because to the question's point, you might be in a very remote area without cell signal. I think that's improving, year over year, but that's often the case in some rural areas. So you're able to still with an app, whether it's on the tablet or smartphone, fill out those logs, complete those assessments, and then once that device does save, it's saved within that device, and once it does hit connectivity, then that's synced with the database. So, good question. Any more? We got 2 or 3 minutes left. And of course, we'd be happy to answer questions, any of us, following this. But I guess just maybe to summarize, I think digital transformation is inevitable. I think Joseph and Peter attested to, it's not as difficult as you might think. I think we talked about having a plan in place. I think once you do make that change over a real-time platform, it really opens doors, right, to making food safety and quality even more central, again, to your organization and brand, right, as a company. I think in addition, your data is easily accessible, enables that visibility that we talked about, that real-time process controls, building trust with customers and management internally. And I think, again, the audit process. I mean, I think those are, some high level. I don't know, Beth, Joseph, or Peter, if you've got anything to add to that, but I think there are significant benefits of moving to a platform.
Well, I mean, you got to do the work either way. So, it's better to have it done electronically for us and be able to access it, in a few moments, versus digging through stacks of paperwork and hoping that the guy down the road did his paperwork. You can check and see it's done. So it leaves that uncertainty out of the back of your mind. It's getting done because you can verify it.
Yeah, that's
well, I think as Joseph and Peter both have alluded to, when you're in a paper-based system, that backlog, it's so much easier for that backlog to be collected on a desk, to go through that verification and being able to catch something that may have happened, that employee may have had an inkling that something wasn't right, but may not have had the full understanding of what that impact may be, versus if you're in a digital platform, somebody's able to look at that in real time or throughout the day, be able to see a potential issue, so that you not only are you audit ready, but far beyond being audit ready, you are much more confident in the processes and the people that you have in your operation. And beyond a food safety audit, if and when FDA knocks on the door, you have that confidence of, okay, I know that here are 2 or 3 issues that are always here because I've watched the trend line, and it always shows me that this pest trap is an issue, or this environmental sampling always comes back hot. It's not a pathogen, but it's something that I've always kept my eye on. So I'm ready because I understand much more of my operation and my people and where my hot button issues might be. So you can address those, and even potentially squish them if that's something that can be eliminated.
All good. Thank you, everybody. So we're here towards the end, and again, if there's some questions that folks have, I'll show you where we can get in touch with some folks. But I think maybe before that, Beth, do you want to talk about kind of
Absolutely.
the next?
So this is definitely the first of 2 or 3 webinar series that we've put together. And again, this is all things that these are all things that we're hearing from our growers, from our members, very real issues. And so the one today was really jumping from the FDA new era of smarter food safety, and really looking at that. How is the technology going to impact us, and what are those pain points? And then also, what are some of the success stories, as we've heard from J&J Family of Farms, in going from paper to an electronic or a software-based platform. So the next piece of this, which is also part of that, one of the 4 core elements core elements of that FDA blueprint, is traceability, a tech-enabled traceability. And how fitting is it that iFoods and Harvest Mark are now together in one organization. So being able to take that traceability element from Harvest Mark and then couple it with the quality and food safety data that iFood brings, I think it's just going to be fantastic. And so Wednesday, September the 9th at 11, we're going to do this again. We're going to have, I believe, Dr. Jennifer McIntyre with United Fresh Produce Association really talking about traceability. This is a passion of hers. It's something that she feels very strongly about. So I'm excited about the September 9th webinar that's coming up.
Great, thanks. And I think be on the lookout for email invitations with a link, or you can send Beth or iFood an email and we'll send you the link and get you registered. So with that, just, thank you again to everybody. Thanks, especially Beth, Joseph, and Peter for taking time out of your busy days and operations to just share your experience. And if you'd like additional information, please email us any inquiries and we'll to the address you see here. And we'd be happy to put you in touch with the appropriate resource. So thank you again, and hope everyone has a great day and rest of the week.